Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. All right, before we go on today's show, there was some pub for Ryder Lyons, and there's always pub for this young man, by the way. Ryder is a bona fide five-star prospect. He is currently the number 2 prospect in this upcoming recruiting cycle, according to 24/7 Sports. And this is really cool to see this. I was sent the quote, said, Jake, did you see this about Ryder Lyons? This comes from, he was at an event this past weekend. What they call it? It was the Nike's Next Ones. It was down in Louisiana, kind of on Super Bowl weekend. And by all accounts, Ryder performed very, very well in the event. But the quote here was, quote, Folsom, California high school quarterback, Ryder Lyons, the number 6 overall player. He's the number 2 quarterback once again, is one of the top arms in the nation. As it stands now, he's, quote, definitely, unquote, taking official visits to USC, Oregon, and BYU. However, before those, he expects to take unofficial visits to Oregon, Michigan, and Ohio State this spring. Regarding his commitment, look for something in July. Lyons was a heavy lean to the Trojans early on, and that's no surprise there. Let me insert that his brother Walker is a tight end at USC. But he says this, Greg Biggins and I, this comes from Tom Lloyd, by the way, who works for 24/7 Sports. He says that Greg Biggins and I have crystal balls in picks in for USC. That said, I don't feel nearly as good about that pick as I once did. He is very open and he's strongly considering other options. We'll see if these visits change things, but keep an eye on the Ducks. Oregon is a big contender in this race, but then here's the kicker. BYU could absolutely get this one done as well. People need to realize how big of a threat they are right now, unquote. Get excited, folks. That's cool to see that because that means that Aaron Roderick and Matt Mitchell, they have done their darndest to get Ryder Lyons interested in BYU. I know they just recently added a commitment from Keneal Sweetwine. Ryder Lyons is going to go on a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So they're not going to line up in the same recruiting class because simple fact of the matter is Keneal will come in immediately, whereas Ryder will defer and come in after a mission. BYU is in the mix. Because think about the teams I just read, the names of the teams I just read. USC, Oregon, Michigan, Ohio State. Like, that's some heavy hitters. It's much like we talked about Malachi Lee earlier this week out of Hawaii. He's the top rated prospect in Hawaii. He names the top 6. They're all blue bloods. And then there's little old BYU in the mix. NIL, the 11-2 season that BYU just put on under Kalani Sitake. There are a lot of factors that are rolling into this, but that should excite you as a Cougar fan. Ryder Lyons has got an elite, absolutely elite arm, and he's just a fantastic quarterback prospect. I have talked with enough people about Ryder Lyons as a prospect, and they are just effusive in their praise of how good of a prospect he is. They talk about the fact that he processes things at a very, very quick rate. They already mentioned it. Tom Lloyd said he's got an elite arm. He has got all the tools to be a fantastic quarterback. And if he were to pick BYU, I would have a hard time saying that the second he steps on campus at BYU, he's in the mix to start for the BYU. That's how good of a prospect he is. He is getting, like I said, national pub, but to hear that he's definitely planning on making an official visit to BYU, that means that BYU is firmly in the mix. And I would say right now, if you read that right there, he says he's going to go officially visit USC, Oregon, and BYU. That sounds like to me that he's got a final 3. Now, could Ohio State or Michigan get in the mix with those unofficial visits? That very well could be the case based on what he's saying. But it screams to me that BYU's swinging for the fences and they're punching right now. And they're going to have a chance. I'm not saying that they're going to win this by any means because, once again, there is still a ways to go. July is an eternity in the recruiting realm. We are in the month of February. We're talking almost 6 months. So much could change in that time. But the fact that Ryder Lyons has got BYU in that definitely territory where he's going to officially visit, and a guy like Tom Lloyd, who's got his ear close to the ground about recruiting, says BYU could absolutely get this one done as well. People need to realize how big of a threat they are right now. That's cool to see. That means that BYU, they're generating that positive buzz out there on the recruiting front, and people are sitting up and paying attention to it. Ryder came and visited BYU last year and brought some of his teammates who are very, very talented players. They recently offered an offensive tackle from Folsom that apparently Ryder's very close to, Vlad Dianakov, I believe is his name. He's a Ukrainian native, if I'm not mistaken. And if you can use that to parlay getting Ryder to BYU, by any means necessary, get a guy of his caliber. I've talked about it once on this podcast. I'll talk about it again. The 2026 cycle for recruiting for BYU is where they need to make hay. You want to see a massive upgrade of the overall talent base in the BYU football program. I think it's gone up since BYU officially joined the Big 12. I will say that. But if you want to see it take another leap, they got to cash in on the 2026 class. There is a lot of high-level talent, and the ties of a lot of that talent to BYU, whether they're via family, whether they're via the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you've got to be able to cash in on this. And that's really exciting to hear that a guy like Ryder Lyons is seriously interested, or at least weighing what his options are, and BYU is one of those options. That's really, really cool to hear and see, and fingers crossed. That could be that. If Ryder Lyons were to commit to BYU, he'd be the first 5-star athlete to commit. Is it since Jake Heaps did so in 2010? Very well may be the case. I can't remember any other 5-star talents, but he also would be the crown jewel of the recruiting class for BYU. It would signal once again that BYU is able to recruit among the nation's elite. There's been a long stretch, obviously during the independent era, that BYU struggled to retain or attract and retain top-tier talent. Well, now they're members of the Big 12 and they're competing at a high level in the Power 4 ranks. That means the BYU, they're showing that they've got some ability to really swing. And I would love to see Ryder Lyons ultimately pick the Cougars, because I really do think that he has got all of the tools to be a fantastic, if not a legendary type quarterback at the collegiate level. Now it's projecting years and years down the line, but I'm telling you, this kid, he has been scouted as heavily as anybody out there when it comes to camps and the like, and it's hard to come across anything that questions what he can do. He is considered to be one of, if not the top athlete in this recruiting class, or at least a quarterback, and that's really cool to see, and that could be a real game changer for BYU if he were to pick the Cougars. So there you go. That's what I got for you guys on this Valentine's Day. Hope you enjoy the holiday. As always, thank you for your support of the podcast. Please subscribe, rate, review, share with your family and friends. And once again, as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day, and thank you for being an everydayer right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.